Hi, I'm Sherry Huss, and I'm part of the Live Labs team. I'd like to introduce my colleague and partner, Itamar Kabavi.
Hi, I'm Itamar. Thanks, Sherry.
Great. And today we're fortunate enough to have Rick McConnell, who is president of Informa Markets North America, joining us. And Rick has not only an interesting portfolio of products, but has quite a great and extensive experience in the event world. So welcome, Rick.
Glad to be here. Hi, Sherry. Hi, Itamar.
Hey, Rick. One of the things that I feel is really a privilege today talking to you is the fact that you've really been in this industry for quite a long time and you've seen a lot of stuff. And it'd be very interesting to just hear, do you really see this as a once in a career, once in a lifetime pivot? Or do you feel like this is just another one of those hurdles that we have to hit and have to survive and have to use our ingenuity to overcome?
I think the thing about events is there's always we laugh about it. If everything went according to plan, right, then it would be an easy business, but it never does. And there's always some sort of curveball. We never know where that curveball is coming from. And I think this one has been a whopper of a curveball, and it is going to change the industry, I think, long term. Once we are looking at post-COVID, and COVID is in the rearview mirror, yeah. I think we are going to learn some really valuable lessons. And when we're going to become better event organizers, we're going to do a better job of connecting communities between shows, and that's already happening. It almost has made us put our digital initiatives into overdrive. It's shortened up the cycle, the learning cycle of really typically doing that, and now we have to really get on with it. And I think that's important. I think it's a valuable lesson learned. So, do I think it's going to change the landscape of the business long term? Do I think I don't. I think events and the need for face-to-face is going to bounce back. I think sooner than later. I think there is pent-up demand. I think you will have a percentage of people that don't go back to events, and that's their prerogative, and that's okay. But I'd say the vast majority of people do need and want to go to events for numerous reasons: networking, education, seeing new products. I mean, there isn't a better way to interact and to learn than in a live event. We're all waiting to go to a concert or a baseball game and all those things, right? And live events, B2B events, B2C events as well.
True.
You know, what's interesting to me is that your portfolio of businesses and brands and events really do focus in some very interesting way on two things. One, stuff that's real stuff, that's concrete, that's like really physical stuff that makes the virtual way harder to imagine as a successful way to communicate a concrete show, to an audience. At the same time, one of the benefits is that you guys, most or many of the things that you oversee can happen outside. Yeah. Tell us a little bit, how have you been adjusting? Because we've all heard that doing stuff outside seems to be way safer than doing stuff indoors, as long as we're in this particular place in the pandemic.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. I think we talk about our personal lives, right, and doing things, being more comfortable doing things outside as opposed to indoors. And I think that kind of thinking goes right into how we view events as well. And I think that for the most part, we've had elements of our primarily indoor events have some outdoor aspects to them, but we are enlarging and increasing the amount of outdoor activity, and in some cases launching some outdoor only events in some markets, including our power sports industry, which is the motorcycle business. And we are now launching some outdoor events for the 21 year. And we've spoken to the leading motorcycle manufacturers, and they are really excited about it. And they've all jumped on board saying, yes, we want this. So that's happened. Our outdoor area at
That's innovation. That feels like innovation. Yeah. I mean,
it
that
is
feels like
innovation.
moving it forward, like delivering
And,
better on what you're doing. Yeah.
and I think that there's no magic bullet here, but I think when you sit down and actually talk to your customers and don't pretend like you know what they want, I think is the other lesson learned here, and by getting these leading manufacturers, the OEMs on board, they feel ownership and they're part of the process. So therefore they want it to work. And that I think is definitely part of the magic, the secret sauce there. Yeah.
Love that. Love that. Sherry, you were
Yeah.
thinking, we'd been talking about this kind of stuff a lot lately, you and I, just in terms of how does this actually change long term, what and how events are thought about. And this is a very interesting twist on it, that you actually have customers and brands that are excited to get better value out of changing things, which is usually not the way things are.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Right.
And I actually, yeah, I do think your portfolio, as Itamar mentioned, like with World of Concrete, that's another perfect show. And you've got an aviation show, your agriculture shows. All of these can actually now, as we start coming back and coming back safely, can start taking place outside. And I love the fact that you're already thinking that way. And that's just kind of another thing for other organizers to start thinking, like, what can you do that's appropriate to be safe and yet still kind of create that networking event, that atmosphere, all the reasons that people get together face to face.
No doubt. No doubt. And I think that, that I am fortunate that there are a lot of the industries that I work within, whether it's construction, agriculture, aviation, infrastructure. These are big capital equipment kinds of events. And,
Right.
And in construction specifically, pros and construction professionals, they want to put their tools in their hands. And when I say tools, I mean hand tools. I mean equipment. I mean concrete polishers. I mean, how do you lay out, grout on a surface? There's all kinds of activities that take place that really are unique for the live event scenario. Yep. And some of that does translate into outdoor, some of it doesn't. Right. And in the case of those parts of the events that will continue to be indoors, we're going to space it out better. We're going to make sure that the congestion doesn't take place, and we'll social distance and mask and do those things that people are doing in a grocery store and they're doing in a restaurant. We'll make sure that those things happen and really enforce it in a big way, in a positive way.
I mean, you talked about briefly with Itamar and I before the call about your safety manual, your 32-point safety manual. Maybe you can share that, because I do think safety is one of those key things that all of us are going to have to make a decision, and we want to make a decision based on knowing that there's a plan and that there's a process and that the event will be safe.
Well, I mean, we've all been to stores, right? And we say, oh, they get it. They get it right. I feel I'm going to come back to that store. And we have to be that trade show. We, as trade show organizers and working with Freeman and other companies, we have to be those that put together events that people feel safe in. Okay. And this 32-point plan it's very specific, although it creates a framework that allows those 32 points to be applied in ways that are aligned with local ordinances and local governments and policies that may exist in certain places. So that we keep in mind too. And that's kind of it. So it's got this flex aspect to it too, but keeping and minimizing, things like eliminating queues, right? That are registration queues, and making sure registration happens online and in advance of the show, or it happens on your iPhone, or it happens on your Samsung, whatever it is, that those things have to happen. And that has to be part of the mix. We're going to have, temperature checks. We're looking into, rapid testing to make sure that, it seems like the prices on these antigen tests are coming down significantly. And people can feel a lot better about, oh my gosh, these people have tested negative, and they can come on into the event. So we're not there yet on that part of it, but we're getting there. No. And just the whole.
Yeah, I mean, I think even just having watched what Adam Silver got done with the NBA over the last few months is impressive, right? I mean, yeah, it's a very special circumstance. We can't repeat that exactly, but it does show that if you test people all the time and you don't kind of let people in or out too often, you can hold a bunch of people together and have them get their work done. And in quite intimate physical, a basketball court's a pretty intense place. So seems like that just to me is a big sign that not we're there, but that we'll get there. We'll get there.
We will get there. And I think that people we're kind of figuring this out. We know some of the areas that cause problems, and we're going to navigate around those kind of problems. And I think that this is something we're going to continue to learn more about as time goes on. But there are this 32-point plan that we really worked collaboratively within the trade show industry and with partners and associations and that kind of thing is really designed to really make it safe.
I mean, that's the nice thing about having Informa and Informa worldwide behind you, right? Because we also chatted about in Asia Pac, a lot of events have started to come back and come back safely. And so you guys being able to benefit from that knowledge is really something that's quite special and unique to Informa and your brand.
It is, and we really do a lot of best practices, a lot of lessons learned, back and forth sharing with our shows, things that work, things that didn't work. I mean, the social distancing has not been an easy thing to navigate, but mandating masks has been, and they've been very successful with that type of thing. So it's going to continue to morph as we go through this, but we do feel like we have a step up a little bit because we've got shows that are actively trading now.
Yep.
And that are starting to come on. Dubai's going to start coming on here fairly soon.
Great.
And there are other countries, and Thailand has been, and Japan have also been trading.
Yep.
So those are good signs. It keeps coming back. Australia, we think, will come on fairly soon. We have businesses in all those areas, including those that I'm responsible for as well.
Yeah.
So
that's great. Well, we're 8 months into this pandemic, and I don't think any of us, I think in the beginning, we all hoped that it was going to go by quickly, but I think there've probably been some key learnings that you've had and some things that probably aren't going to go back to the way that they were, because they're better now. Certain content being delivered to a broader audience, data on that. I can imagine that those are things that you and your teams have been looking at too.
We definitely have, and it's kind of interesting that we are building out plans that we have decided that if an event runs or it does not run, we will still have a virtual and a digital component with that event, nice. Whether it runs or not. Okay, it may be a more expansive, larger online undertaking if the event does not run, but right. We're hopeful that it is, and part of that is good old-fashioned calendaring, where we're getting out of the first half of the year the best we can. We think we still have a number of shows that are scheduled in June, but we're kind of hedging the bet there that the later in the year that those shows are going to take place, the better shot we have at actually running them.
Right.
But what we do is we connect communities, and there's lots of ways you connect those communities. And people are looking for leads. They're looking for deals, striking a deal. They're looking for acquiring merchandise. They're looking at how to find out ways to do things better from other industry professionals. And a lot of those things can be done online, and a lot of those things have to be done live. I think the experiential aspect that happens at an event is something that it cannot be replaced as well. But we really have worked hard at having online matchmaking kinds of initiatives. That's really growing, working with some outside vendors to do that as well. And we're seeing some pretty good success there. But so it's sort of a hybrid model, and it's not just about a virtual event. It's how do you connect through a series of webinars. It might be a festival event. It may be lining up, keynotes. It's not the traditional virtual event kind of model that we used to think of in 1999 and 2000, which is, you walk through a booth, virtually, and that's not what we're talking about. It's a business model. But obviously, first and foremost, we're event organizers, and that's what we want to build our business around, and that's our desire to get people back at trade shows first and foremost.
Yep. That makes sense. I can also see that even expanding for folks that there's always people that are interested in what the content at a trade show or at an event that can't go. So kind of just even seeing that expanding that audience is going to be even valuable for, as you mentioned, new business models, but valuable for partners and sponsors, because they can reach a wider audience when they're kind of all dressed up at the show, right? And there's always this fear of missing out. I know on the consumer side that it's always like, if you can't go to an event, you always like, what's going on, or you want to see it. So I think that that's another opportunity too, to just cast the net.
It is a big opportunity. And there's the other one I wanted to point out too, is I just was a part of a meeting earlier today, and our Vita Foods group out of Europe just had a virtual event that was very successful. And they were sharing some of the statistics in and around that event. And they had something like 12,000 visits to the virtual event, which is exciting, 4,000 meetings. But the statistic that I found to be fascinating is that 47% of total attendees had never attended our trade shows before. Mm-hmm. And this is the first, and they are now participating in the virtual event. Well, good Lord, isn't that a great area to to work through and try to connect to the virtual event, to the regular event, to the live version once that comes on? I mean, we're reaching now an audience that we never reached before. Right. And we're doing it through social media outlets and through LinkedIn and some other properties, and getting some good response. But that becomes a whole new arena for live events that we can connect people to.
And I think that's interesting, because it really, I think what I'm focusing on here is you're saying, guys, when we say hybrid, we don't mean we're streaming the event. We don't mean we mean we're thinking of the whole thing in a new way. And in terms of lead generation, in terms of different levels of membership and commitment, going from the virtual attendance all the way down to the live event attendance in some kind of crucial way. And that becomes one community that we're kind of constantly moving along the funnel, pushing down the pipe. And that's a cool new business, right? I mean, that you've got this lead generator. The better you do the virtual, the better the desire and demand is for the live. And that's the relationship you want, not one where they're hybrid, where they're cannibalizing each other, but where they're supporting each other.
And I think that the old school thinking used to think that one did cannibalize the other, and I don't think that's how it is anymore. I do think that you've got a very digitally savvy audience now that are, millennials and Gen Zers, and there are one digital native after the other coming into the business world. And we have to make sure to connect with them in different ways, and virtual events and digital offerings and webinar series and those kinds of things help us do that. But ultimately, we want those folks to attend our events. And we think this is a great pipeline, I think is the word you used, to get them to go to those events.
Do you think now that you're like looking at your audience in a 365 way? I mean,
we always, it's funny, Sherry, we used to always say that, right? We used to always say, well, we need to serve our audience 365. We never did it.
Right.
And now we're doing a better job of that now.
Yeah.
And that's been a big takeaway. But I think we really are starting to serve those communities on a year-round basis too. And we're really stretching out and reaching non-exhibiting groups and non-attending groups. Obviously, we want them to come into the live events at some point. That would be ideal. But some may not ever, and that's okay too. Absolutely. Because we have to serve the market, and we're trying to help people conduct commerce, right?
Right.
And
Absolutely.
that could be a combination of online throughout the year. And when you have a series of virtual events and virtual festivals and webinar series and sprinkled in with live events and conferences too, which we haven't really talked on. We are also launching some new leadership summits, which are live events that will be taking place throughout the year in our licensing area. Which we have not done before. We're planning one in Europe, and we're planning one in the US. And that is additive to the big BLE event, which is Brand Licensing Europe, and LE, which is the Licensing Expo in Vegas. So these are these are new events to making sure that the top executives get together to be able to construct deals and find licensees and licensors can connect. So that's the other part of that 365, are these smaller, more intimate conferences that will enable commerce.
Plus with those events now too, you have the added probably benefit that those executives want to get together. Like they need you now more than ever to keep their business going. So it's almost the best case scenario, right?
Correct.
That's awesome. That's great. How about team? How has it been managing teams, and what are they thinking, through all this period?
I'm glad that's a good question. And I would say that most of the leaders that work for me are saying that they've never worked so hard, and that it's been that you don't have that day-to-day connection, live connection with maybe somebody you work with on a team, that you've got to create that connection. And I used to traditionally do with my direct reports, we used to get together 4 times a year live, and they're spread out all over the US and some that are in Europe. And we'd get together and do these summit type meetings. And now we're getting together once a week, okay? Once a week, not from 4 times a year to once a week.
Yep.
Now, the context of those meetings aren't as long, right? In some cases, they're 30-minute meetings, but they're catch-ups, but there's always, there's something moving, and some people are doing some really cool things virtually, and some people are doing some negotiation with venues to try to, move the shows later in the year. Whatever it is, we do feel that we have to kind of funnel that information together. And that trickles down right into the rest of the team. So the informal and formal communication has to be forced, and there's got to be a specific plan to make sure that happens on a very regular basis, because people in a down economy get nervous and get worried. And it's our job to make sure that, hey, things are okay. You're part of the mix. We need your input. We need your involvement. And I think when that happens, the teams tend to stay together a lot better. An overused word that we all hear all the time is transparency. And you hear that in government, you hear that in business, but I hate to tap into just buzzwords, but transparency is something you do have to really be on top of. And I think people respect the fact that I'm sharing things that may not be all pretty. We may have to, reduce our indirect costs or our direct costs, and that may impact people directly or indirectly.
Right.
And but letting them know what's going on, I think it really does help.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
Do you find that there's been, one of the things that we keep thinking about is credible industry, people that know how to do a lot of stuff, and that know how to do a lot of stuff that's not their main expertise. Like a lot of people have more than one expertise and are suddenly like, sure, I know how to build a house, or whatever it is. You'll learn that these people know how to do a lot of stuff. But you wonder a lot, are we looking at a whole new, or not whole new, but partially new workforce that we haven't had as part of our industry at the same level before? Like, is there a whole new group of people that we're kind of need to be inviting in?
Yeah, so we have had to really shift on the skill sets within our teams. In some cases, we have had to downsize. I don't think there is an event business that hasn't had to downsize. And those have been some really difficult and tough decisions that we've had to make. But the good thing is we are adding back. We are adding back people with different skill sets, in some cases that are that can put together a really comprehensive digital plan, that can go out and work with a third-party vendor and set up a matchmaking program, or that can build out a program that allows new directory sorts that can connect with buyers and sellers in ways that they've not connected before. We are even working on outside companies, but because you don't have all the experts, it's difficult at this time to invest in really highly technical projects. What we call programmatic advertising, which is really an automated way of connecting buyers and sellers together. And there are companies out there that have really done that very successfully, and those are skill sets that we brought in too. So the workforce has changed significantly from where it was, let's say, a year ago.
So what have been a couple of like the shining, kind of the shining stars for you over the past couple months? Could be personal, could be through work, but like what's kind of, giving you hope even going forward?
I think this is maybe more difficult to put your finger on, but I think that I've been amazed at the tenacity and the stick-to-itiveness and the desire for this to work from team members, and people have really been part of the solution. When times are tough, people sometimes in the old days used to seem like they used to just point the finger at the other person because something came down. Now we're all in this together, and we're trying to find new solutions. It has forced more creativity than I've ever seen in the trade show business in my business career. I've been doing trade shows specifically since the 90s. And it is exciting to see. It is morphed very rapidly. And that's a big, big win. I also think that we are doing a better job of building out, virtual events. I think that's happened. That's exciting. We used to always talk about doing them and never did them. And we never felt like we had to do them, and now we have to do them. Right. And it's amazing what when you have to do something, what you develop.
That's true.
As an example, we've had our licensing. We developed a festival of licensing. It's a 4-week program. It's sort of geographically based. There's a week in Europe. There's a week in Asia. There's a week in America, and then there's a leadership summit at the end. And these are all done virtually. And that event is going to end up generating a third or close to half of what the event revenues generated. So we're talking in the millions of dollars, okay, from something that was zero before. And that was done by the team, and that's cool. And that is just one example of many. And I don't think that goes away. And again, I do think they coexist with live events. I do think I do believe that live events will become stronger if our digital and our virtual events are better. Okay, I believe that in my heart. I do not believe they're going to replace. I don't. Because just think about that example that I used a minute ago, about 47% of the attendees of that virtual event. Are we going to get all of them to come in our event? No. But how about 20% of them? God, that'd be great. Who doesn't want that kind of an increase at a show?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I actually, we really wanted to check in with you today. And I actually, it's been a very upbeat call. I love your optimism and your creativeness and kind of passion for the future. I think those are the things that are going to help us get there, wherever there is. And would love to kind of just stay in touch with you and keep sharing. I think that's the most important thing right now. And
I do think that there are great times ahead for the event industry. I do believe that. I know it's happening. Will 21 have its bumps in the road? It absolutely will have bumps in the road. And but it'll be better than 20. It'll be better than 20.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for your time today, Rick. And we definitely want to check in with you, and I want to hear about all your shows. And we didn't even get into talk about Farm Progress or your Husker Harvest as well, but they all sound great. And,
great.
So we will check in with you in 2021.
Sounds good. Anytime. It's a pleasure talking to you all.